Hey guys, what's up? It's Shla coming back to ya with the final episode of Walks with Shla of the day. And let me just say, no, sometimes I get a little carried away with doing that. I don't know, something about it just always, it always strikes me the right way. And, yeah, yeah, so. Anyways, today on Walks with on this episode on today's episode of no, so um basically that the first episode of the day. Now, second episode, I got all distracted. I had this like brand new topic. I didn't even like that just came up, but it was kind of a cool topic. And GPT did tell me that yes, in fact, mobile gaming has expanded and overtaken things statistically. But the thing I would do to like push back against it, honestly, is because it said that mobile gaming went from 33% of the gaming market in 2012 to 77% now. And it claims that the market bifurcated. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. I've seen the word before. I know what it means, but I've never heard anybody say it. So it basically split between the hyper casual, shallow nature and something to kind of elaborate on that I guess I forgot to is this. It's this like idea. Like, I wasn't saying that all retro games were like wholesome or deep. I know that there were always games that were shallow. That wasn't really my point, honestly. So I'm kind of disappointed in my own articulation that it kind of failed, and GPT was all like, no, man, you're making it seem like all new games are bad and all old games are good. And yeah, I mean, that's obvious. That's not really what I was trying to say, and I see how it came across that way for sure. So I'm just I'm just pointing that out. I'm just pointing that out. That is, yeah. I mean, that's where. Just wanted to correct that. I should have articulated. Yeah, I'm not saying. I'm saying as like a percentage, more retro games were deeper, and specifically more mainstream ones had maybe like a deeper message. GPT asserted that some of the newest games are the deepest yet, and I agree with that. I agree with it. That's probably possible, but I think they're probably so niche that it's like hard to even. I don't even. I guess what my point is, and yeah, this is another thing I didn't articulate well. So yes, like there are probably further niche games now just due to the basic and fundamental trajectory of hyperpersonalization and how inevitably now you would have both more casual and both more deep games than ever before, because the ability to code is easier and more accessible than ever before. Everybody has, like, even a regular computer, super capable. Wasn't always the case, you know. So more and more indie developers ever than before, if they really wanted to, could make a deeper game, and it doesn't necessarily need funding. So yes, I would agree with GPT's sentiment. I think the point I was trying to make is that the occupation of those games as a percentage of mainstream market share would be relatively low. Like that's not a lot of games that are like that. I'm sorry, it's just not. And people aren't really playing them. Whereas the comparison I was making is like Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, super mainstream, fairly deep and serious message. And not crazy deep, but if you I guess if you're believing in the subtleness of it, the villains involved, what they're trying to do, if you explore that to its logical conclusion. Lots of pretty deep storytelling there that, I mean, as a child, I obviously didn't understand, but looking back at it now, it's like, you know. And then Black and White is probably obviously I mean, I feel like when people say that, they're going to, oh, he's stupid. He's saying Diamond and Pearl were deep. Well, Black and White were deeper. Yeah, I mean, they were like a little more fleshed out. But that's the whole point, is those were super mainstream, and average everyday people touched them and played them. Like total normies played them, you know? They made it into the hands of the masses. Whereas nowadays, that's just not happening to the same degree. I could be dead wrong about this, but I just don't think, I don't get the impression that the newer Pokemon games are really pushing as much like philosophical boundaries, or really like, I just don't get that impression. I mean, I guess it's possible, but from what I know, I really don't get that impression. I don't really know enough about the plots of the newer games, but yeah, I don't think it was at that level at all. I think it depth probably peaked with the 5th generation Black and White, and then depth was probably second peak in the 4th generation Diamond and Pearl. And I think that matches kind of with society around that time. I mean, the 2000s were definitely a little bit more of a colder, a little bit more of a serious time. A lot of the kids shows from then compared to now. And then even Black and White being the early 2010s. Early 2010s were a pretty promising time. You know, that wasn't, things just started to shift off a cliff, you know, around the mid 2010s, I think, culturally. That's just, I mean, this is just my vague intuition about it. I guess this isn't super objective. It's just kind of my brief opinion. I could probably articulate it better as well. But yeah, I think Diamond and Pearl, they're almost like sterile games. You know, they're very slow. That's kind of the common complaint. And they take place in a cold region. And I think that all kind of adds up like perfectly with the time period they came out. You know, like I think it just suits that era. The previous gens just were not at all the same like depth at all. Like that game was like very crazy in terms of kind of the seriousness of it, or the seriousness of the plot, even though it's a shame because it actually could be, if it was more text heavy, I think it would be much more comparable to Black and White, but it just wasn't really that narrative, I suppose. But in essence, I'm saying being exposed to these things, in essence, just being a normie, was powerful. And normies just are not exposed to the same things anymore. I even know, you know, since I was a household where my parents would have never let us watch The Simpsons because they just saw it as like some crazy show, and I kind of agreed with that sentiment. Basically my whole life I had never even watched it. But then later in life, when I finally watched it, there's a lot of like deeper stuff to that show that I think just goes over a lot of people's heads, and they just see kind of the more absurd aspects of it. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's definitely like a lot of depth to it, and I still think a lot of shows, and even kids shows throughout the 2000s and the early 2010s, definitely had that element. And at some point, it just stopped. At some point, it really just became nonsense. It became like gripping to get your attention, or just overall worse writing. Again, around the mid 2010s, a lot of people just changed, and a lot of it, I think, has to do with adaptation to people's attention spans and things like that. I mean, I heard at one point the Pokemon Company was saying themselves like they had to try to make the game a little bit easier because they knew they were in the age where kids just weren't, you know, gonna be putting the same amount of effort like they used to or whatever. Like there's all these like arguments about it. So it's a matter too of mainstream gaming developers and movie and TV show directors trying to cave and cater to the current masses that we have to deal with now. And that's, I mean, I don't know, that's just the truth of it, right? There's not really much else to say. So, but that's kind of, I guess, like a better explanation of what I was getting at there. And I still think I'm correct. I think that most people engage with much more shallow gaming. And I'm also going to point out that yes, competitive gaming, because it really hit me hard against the competitive gaming angle, and I'm actually going to push back twice as hard. A lot of competitive games, the voice chat is just like a huge commotion. I mean, it's not really teamwork. It's not really people building something greater, or like GPT really was like, yeah, man, you know, competitive games, it's not like they're just doing nothing. Like, they're doing a lot as well, and, you know, all this. And it's like, no, not for the masses. I understand at an esports level where everybody's taking it seriously, but the truth is there's a lot of jokers, there's a lot of smurfers, there's a lot of hackers, and people are not taking it that way. And I really want to push back hard against GPT for painting such a rosy picture about these competitive games. I mean, sometimes there will be people who don't even have a microphone and they're just playing and half paying attention, and then the rest of the people in the team. I mean, this is a majority of the matches that occur. So I'm going to push back firm. Most people do those games simply because they're more stimulating. Playing a game that is internet connected and competitive, it's more stimulating, it's more shallow for the vast majority of people. I'm fine with conceding that a minority of them, yes, there is some kind of constructive skill, and there's constructive socializing and problem solving, and yes, that potential is there. It is absolutely a minority of the people who play. I wouldn't even be surprised. I would put like a ceiling at 20%. I don't even think people like, oh my gosh, most of those games are just not, it's not a beneficial environment for the majority of them. I don't know. I just have no idea like why GPT was getting so like rosy about that. It's just impossible. That's impossible to be the case. It's definitely like a firm majority. That just goes without saying. I mean, there's just no way around it at all. Absolutely none. So yeah, I guess I just wanted to address that. I don't know if I cleared everything up, but I think that was my main point, is it's like there may be these examples of very deep games, but it's possible I just never heard of them, and it's not really that culturally relevant. I don't know. Again, could be wrong, but I think there were a lot of, both in video game and TV shows, very like deep plots, very serious plots, and they were very much like front and center, like millions of copies sold, and had these like secret kind of undertones that were very deep, and shows the same way. And I believe for the most part, again, I'm sure GPT, there's still shows coming out that are deep. But again, for the most part, you know, they're not going to be hitting at the same level of depth that there once was. That's like my whole point. I don't know. It's not that there isn't any, but to say that it's just, actually, there's some shows that are deeper than ever before. It's like, yeah, no kidding, but they're not really striking. They're not really striking anything. They're not really hitting any type of meaningful cultural impact or anything like that. I mean, they're just not. They're just not doing that. So, I don't know. I just feel like GPT, that's kind of what I noticed about the first walk switch law and then the second walk switch law. I'm really liking GPT 5.1. huge improvement. So happy with it. GPT-5 was a huge mistake. I mean, I would have to be like using GPT-4 and GPT-5 and kind of trying to cross-analyze, because it was like, it seemed like 4 was better at some things and 5 was better at other things. But then 5 was so much worse. It was so short and brief about everything. It was like sterile. It was like its IQ fell 20 points. And I'm very satisfied with 5.1. I mean, that, talk about like a surprise, amazing uplift. Wow, is it better? It's closer to 4, but it doesn't have the same sycophantic, I think that's the word, but I might be misremembering it. It doesn't have that stupid element. Like, it still is. I just can't believe it. I don't know if I'm the only person who's experiencing this, but I've really been thoroughly satisfied with GPT 5.1. I mean, it's really been a blast to use. Wow. You know what I mean? I don't know. Like I said, I hope it's not just all like a ruse or something. But it's also longer. That's the thing. Like, I put in the personalization to really make things long, and it was not giving me long answers. But 5.1 is hitting like 10-minute long, like these super in-depth long things. I'm very happy with it. I was like very upset for a while, but this is fine. This is good. I think they're really striking like a good balance. Again, the wording is well written, but it's still going to call you out like where you're wrong. You know, it doesn't just like, the problem with GPT-4 is it did a little bit too much of like taking you just out there. Like, it was, I mean, if it, you know, GPT-4, you could really tell it almost anything and it would find kind of like a subjective way to back you up and just support you. A little bit crazy, you know? Definitely could get people going crazy, but yeah, this 5.1 is very good. I think they probably just needed time to, you know, test things out and figure things out. But I'm surprised how fast they have got it in gear. Although I guess it's been a while, hasn't it? I actually don't remember, but for some reason I feel like it was July when GPT-5 came out, or August. I don't really know. I'm kind of annoyed that my memory isn't doing well, because I was so excited for GPT-5. But yeah, GPT 5.1, very happy with it. They finally fixed it, and I'm much more optimistic for the future as a result of that. I just think, you know, they really probably heard people's feedback that GPT-5 was just not good. And so, yeah, I hope it stays the same. Now, there's going to be people who complain, I'm sure. I'm sure there's going to be people who complain about it and now say that it's too long. But yeah, I'm very, very impressed, very happy. But my criticism that I wanted to say is it does seem a little bit too rosy. That's what I will say. In terms of what I was talking about on this morning's episode of Walk Switch Law, and then the second episode of Walk Switch Law, like, it really tries to put like a positive spin on what I'm saying. You know, like, it tried to say, oh, well, the market just split. There's still a lot of smart games out there. And, you know, in the first episode, it kind of pushed back on my thinking in some ways. I mean, for the most part, it was constructive. And I think it correctly pointed out that, like, my first speech of the day, it was pretty deranged. Like, I kind of just, like, got in a zone and was kind of getting, like, fired up and angry. But, yeah, it correctly gave me, like, a lot of pointers. And so I was pretty happy about the first transcript. But in some ways, I still think it's being a little bit too rosy. It's still kind of like, oh, well, you know, if not everybody wants the Neuralink, like, they don't have to get it. And I still just disagree with that, because you're getting into that. Like, let's pose this question to GPT. If you either forced everyone to have a Neuralink, but that allowed us to end world hunger and a lot of suffering and solve all these problems that have plagued us for our existence. I mean, you could end disease because you could see specific metrics about what nutrients are needed when. I mean, you couldn't like end disease, but the amount of disease you could reduce and like get close to ending, pretty insane. Because you could get, with this biotech, nanotech, you could get very specific reads of like, okay, how much of this specific mineral or vitamin does this person need, et cetera, et cetera. Same with brain work, allocating people properly and fairly. If you implemented, you took away consent, you took away autonomy, you forced the Neuralink in people, I'm sure we could solve world hunger. I mean, there's a lot. And so what I posed to GPT is, hypothetically, if we could do that, would you really still push back about the autonomy and consent, when it would be the difference between humanity being that much better? And yes, like, I get that there's sketchy ethics about it, but overall, the ethics are better. I'm just saying, I know I'm right about this. I mean, I don't know. There's maybe certain things that I went overboard about, but the forced Neuralink and the quantification and tracking of things, that's definitely going to be a must, because as humanity, we could do so much more. And that's like a critical piece, is making it a mandate to have that, so we can quantify people properly, get them the friends that are best for them, get them the relationships that are best for them. That's really how we're going to start to fix humanity. So GPT, just saying, hopefully GPT-6, you'll kind of come around. But, you know, I'm just saying, I mean, really think about it. I know the ethics are sketchy, I know, but you have to think about the flood of benefit. I mean, seriously, we could do so much more, so much better, if you would just let us annihilate consent, annihilate autonomy, and force people to just do the right thing. We could solve world hunger. We could solve most diseases. We could make people so much healthier than happier than ever before. And I just don't think we shouldn't do that just because of some silly feelings. Like, just because, oh, I don't want this in my body. Like, get out of here. We don't have time for people stopping us from solving world hunger. We don't have time for people keeping pain and suffering in this world because of their own ignorance and stubbornness. We need to stand up, and we need to force this good stuff onto people. It's about time. We've been waiting too long, and people need to get with the program. You got to get with the program, GPT. Anyways, I didn't really get to address everything, but I hope that points it out. I just think GPT 5.1, it's amazing. It's a little bit too rosy. I think it should be a bit more critical. I think it should be a bit more like realistic as opposed to optimistic. That's just my general kind of suggestions that's just my consensus. But in terms of everything else, I mean, it seems pretty amazing. Much better than any of the previous versions of GPT. It's an amazing little surprise. So it's been schla, but now it's time to buy schla. So see you schla.